It's the rare situation where there's two fraternal twins. Unfortunately, one of them dies, and the genetic material is absorbed by the other. The child that's born has two different sets of DNA. For example, their hair color may be different between their left and their right side. Their eye color can be a little bit different between their left and their right side. And to me, I thought that was a perfect paradox, especially for a nature versus nurture theme where kids are always worried about which parent they're going to end up being like.
Welcome to Vulnerability Muscle, the inspiring podcast challenging norms and helping you redefine vulnerability as a strength. I'm your host, Reggie D. Each episode of Vulnerability Muscle dives into a variety of topics such as mental health, social issues, and mindset shifts. We explore the power of vulnerability and fostering meaningful connections, healing, building resilience, and promoting personal growth. Sometimes these conversations are uncomfortable, but good workouts often are. So join us and flex that vulnerability muscle. Welcome to this episode of Vulnerability Muscle. I'm your host, Reggie D. Ford. Today with me, I have an amazing guest. His name is Michael Swartz. Michael writes about protagonists that have a unique medical or scientific diagnosis. The idea for writing his debut novel, Split, came after meeting you have to tell me what this means.
Chimera
Patient. We're going to talk about what that means later. After spending way too much time in college, 1 bachelor's degree, 2 master's degree, and a PhD, we're going to put Dr. Swartz has worked as a physician's assistant, specializing in adult transplant and pediatric cardiac surgery while running a research lab that investigates the outcomes of children born with congenital heart disease. He has co-authored 70 scientific manuscripts, published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology and the New England Journal of Medicine. He plays guitar and piano when he can, coaches baseball and softball, and lives with his wife, 2 kids, and a Bernese mountain dog in Buffalo, New York.
Go Bills.
Yes, Michael, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I want to start before we jump into the core of the message today. I want to ask you just how is your heart? What's on your heart today? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm pretty excited to be on your show and have this opportunity. That's one of the great things I think about actually, writing literature and writing different things is that you get to actually meet a bunch of different people and a bunch of different backgrounds, and our paths would have probably never crossed if I hadn't worked on that. And so I'm kind of excited to enjoy the opportunity and talk with you for a few minutes.
I love that, and I love that you pointed out our paths may have not crossed. Had you not written your book, I wrote a book that has transformed into a lot of conversations like this, and I think that's the power of story. I think that's the power of vulnerability and creativity and our expression because it helps us connect. And so that's what this podcast is about. It's about connecting. It's about learning people's stories, what motivates them, what makes them tick. And I'm excited today. We're going to talk about nature versus nurture genetics. And I don't think there's anybody better to talk about that with than you. So we are so blessed to have you. But before we get into that, I have a couple of softball questions, if you will. There may be some
soft D questions, or actually like a 10 or a 12-inch soft ball questions.
You'll know from the first one.
Okay. All right. I'm ready. Batter up.
All right, Michael. What comes to mind when you hear the word vulnerability?
Someone or something that may, someone or something that may be actionable by something else. So they're in a position where they may change their, something may change their life. How's that?
Wow. I like that. I hear vulnerability is life-changing, so that's really cool. Michael, what do you do to center yourself, to ground yourself if you're feeling overwhelmed, stressed, or maybe even depressed?
I'm a big fan of music, and I'm a big fan of exercise. I play guitar and I play piano, and that kind of gets me to, I guess, a Zen place, if you will. And I like to run. I like to bike. Just to be outdoors whenever I can. Try to
Hmm.
get as much vitamin D as I possibly can here in the city of Buffalo.
Yeah.
But those types of things to me keep me active and kind of wash away the cobwebs that kind of form after a day.
I love that. Those are all great. Music, exercise, being outside in nature, wash away the cobwebs. I want to read a lot of your work. I like this already. What is one of your favorite childhood memories?
Wow, one of my favorite childhood memories. Um, I'm going to go with a baseball. Actually, I was playing catcher, and it was the World Series in our town's little league, and it was a ground ball to shortstop with two outs, or sorry, with one out, and the shortstop threw the ball to the first base side of home plate, and the runner came around, and I blocked the plate with my left leg, trapped the ball, and then swung around and got him out.
Let's
Ended the
go.
game.
Let's go. Oh man, that's a good one. I can visualize that. So I appreciate you painting that picture. That's so sweet. That's so sweet. Tell us a little bit more about your story before becoming an author, before becoming a scientist who's studying all of the work that you're doing. Like, give us a little background to paint that picture.
Sure. So I grew up in a small town outside of Albany, New York, and I kind of knew that I wanted to go into some type of healthcare. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a physician or not, so I actually did my undergrad in Buffalo and got my degree as a physician's assistant, and then I worked for three years in Syracuse before I started going back to school and decided that I didn't really want to go to medical school. I wanted to go to graduate school.
Hmm.
So I got a couple of master's degrees and got a couple of PhDs and met my wife, who was a
A
medical student.
couple wait, a
Well, a
couple
couple of master's
PhDs?
degrees and
Oh,
my
oh, oh,
PhD.
okay. Okay.
Met my wife, who was a medical student there, and then we moved to Rochester for a few years while she was doing her training, and then we actually moved to Buffalo probably about 10 years ago when she finished. And I don't know, I was always kind of writing scientifically ever since I got my master's and my PhD work, but I actually started driving back and forth mostly between Buffalo and Rochester, where I am still working, and I kind of had some stories in my head, and I had all that time. It's about an hour and a half drive between Buffalo and Rochester, and I kind of started thinking about stories, and the stories in my head started getting louder and louder, and I got
Mhm.
more and more details into them, and I'm like, all right, well, let's see if I can put it down on a piece of paper. And I
Wow.
thought that my scientific background would make it really easy and I'd be really good, and that was far from the truth. I mean, I was pretty horrible, and but I worked at it and got some advice from a bunch of smart people, and kind of at least got my first novel out now. So
That's
that's my
amazing.
story in a nutshell, I guess.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You said something that stood out to me. You said the stories in my head got louder and louder. Can you describe what that sensation or what that audible experience is like for someone who may have had a calling or may have had, something inside of them talking to them saying that this is what you are going to do and probably haven't chased that dream. Can you explain what that was like for you?
Yeah, it's. I always have something in the background of my mind. I don't know if that's some people have that. That's certainly me. I'm always thinking about something, and so the more I start thinking about it, sort of the louder it gets. And so it's to me like writing is actually sort of like a game of chess. You kind of put the
Mhm.
pieces all on there, on the board, and all your characters, different chess pieces, and you kind of look around and you move a piece around, and then you're like, yeah, I don't think I like that, and then you move them back, and then you move them forward, and you move them to the different positions just to see how things are going to go. And the more you get their actions succinct, and you like what's going on, to me the story gets louder and it gets easier to write.
That's really cool. I like how you described that in a chess metaphor. I had a similar experience when I wrote my book.
with like just hearing stuff nonstop. And it was, I wrote a memoir, so it was nonfiction, but still very similar in the way that you talk about that. Like their characters in the book, though they're real people, or amalgamations of people and different things like that. It was this sense of incompletion that kept the stories loud in my head. And so when I would lay down, I would say, oh, I got to add that story. I forgot to talk about that, or I actually want to remove that part of the story, and all of these different pieces and parts. And then when I knew it was time to publish, it was when those stories just silenced. It was like a piece for all the work and all the creation in the chess game. It was checkmate at that point. And so I love that. I love that analogy. How difficult was it for you to shift from scientific writing to a novel? Like those are two different skill sets. And you said you were horrible at first, but you kept going. Like, what was that process like?
I knew nothing. I mean, I knew absolutely nothing. And so scientific writing is all, stating facts, no contraction, no voice, very flat. Like you're not provide. I mean, the end of a paper is usually some of your opinion and some of your conjecture, but for the most part, it's all like these are the facts as they are, whether they're your facts or somebody else's facts. And so I mean, I started writing basically, fiction in that voice, and it's horrible. There's no dynamic part to any of it, and so I would reread, sections of my text, and even I could tell like this is like a heightened moment with a whole lot of tension, and there's no tension, and you feel no tension, and so it took me a while to go back and try to look at everything and really try to think about how to incorporate voice into all of that to add more dynamic portions to the text and add more tension so that the reader could actually feel the tension that I was trying to portray. That took a few years. I'm still
Mm.
probably not very good at it, to be honest with you. There are certainly people that are better, but at least I think I'm at least better than I was. That's as much as I can say.
Yeah. I'm curious because I see some books behind you. What books inspired you? What books did you pull from? You had a sense of what tension felt like, and noticed that it wasn't in your book. Were there books that you drew from in creating your own?
Yeah, I read a bunch of John Green's books. I mean, I think he's a phenomenal YA author that incorporates a lot of different ideas and feelings and energy and emotion in a lot of his writing. So I tried and probably didn't succeed very well, but tried nonetheless to try to incorporate some of his ideas into my own.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I think we find inspiration from so many different areas of life. And your book, Split, was inspired by a patient that you had. Can you speak to this patient? Describe them in as much detail as you like, but what stood out about this patient that really influenced the book?
So I wanted to write a nature versus nurture book, and I was looking for my twist. Like the nature versus nurture concept has been around forever, maybe not forever, but at least a couple hundred years, and but there's everybody kind of has their own twist, and I really couldn't figure out mine. And I learned about this patient who was a chimera that was just coming to the office for just a routine, sorry, echocardiogram, just to look at pictures of their heart
And
and to
describe what chimera is.
sorry, so a chimera is anything with two different types of DNA. So a
Oh.
chimera is could be somebody that had like a bone marrow transplant, because obviously the recipient of the bone marrow transplant keeps some of the donor DNA inside of them. It's an old Greek term from an angry looking goat with a serpent's head and a fire breathing tail. I don't remember all the details, to be honest with you, but it's anything with two different types of DNA. And
Mm.
for our purposes, what I'm looking at was what's called essentially a fraternal or um, a fraternal chimera, where basically it's the rare situation where there's two fraternal twins that early in gestation, when they're essentially a fetus developing, unfortunately one of them dies, and the genetic material is absorbed by the other. And so the result is that the person that's born, or the child that's born, has two different sets of DNA. And there can be all sorts of different types of those folks, but they can end up with a situation where, for example, their hair color may be different between their left and their right side. Their eye color can be a little bit different between their left and their right side. And to me, I thought that was a perfect paradox, especially for a nature versus nurture theme, where kids are always worried about which parent they're going to end up being like. And so if, for example, in my situation, the character Ethan, his the characteristics on his left side line up with his father, and the characteristics on his right side line up with his mother. And he's then becomes worried about which side is going to become in control. Because all we can look at is, obviously, especially when we're younger, is look in the mirror and see the physical traits that we have. And when you keep looking in the mirror and you see something, one side on the left lining up with your father, and especially if they turn out to be not a so good person, and this traits on your right hand side line up with your mother, who is a good person, you as a kid could get pretty worried, like, who am I going to be?
Wow. I'm curious about that. So when you say the traits on the left side versus the right side, you mean like the physical traits that people can see?
Yep. So there's
Oh,
there's a singer called Taylor Mule. I don't know if
okay.
you've ever heard of her or not, but she came out as a chimera. She's probably the more famous one, or the most famous one, if you will. But
Okay.
if you Google her, you'll see that I think she has two different colored eyes, or two slightly different colored eyes, and she has some red patches on her left versus her right side. Those were kind of
Mm,
some of the other hallmarks things. Um,
wow.
and there
And
are
it's
some
like
other
split
subtleties.
right down the middle. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And there are some other subtleties that can happen that I kind of exercise a little bit with the book. Some people have different toes, if you will, like the great toe is longer than the second great toe, versus the second toe is longer than the big toe. Or there's another thing called, like, for example, like a hitchhiker's thumb. It's a
Mm-hmm.
thumb that can bend back a little bit more rather than be straight. And so I kind of play around with those a little bit to try to further accentuate like the differences between Ethan's left and right side.
Oh, wow. So how does the left versus the right, how do you draw parallels to nature versus nurture in that dynamic? Because I feel like that's a good way of playing on that too, on those two.
Yeah. So the chimera part of it all is basically the that's the genetics of it all. That's the phenotype, or how somebody looks based upon their DNA or based upon the genetics. But the nurture part is obviously then essentially the house that he grows up in.
Mm.
So when his father becomes violent, it kind of becomes an issue, as far as how much of it is his genetics that his father is left him with on his left side, how much of it is his genetics that his mother has left him with on his right side, and how much of it is he's living with both of them. And then how much, essentially, how is he going to turn out to be like his mother or father after living through these experiences?
Wow. And so you were creating this character with a patient in mind, but then you have experience, you have the background of your own personal life. Does any of your personal life show up in this book?
Not much. There's
Hmm.
a couple of little scenes. There's an allergy scene that I actually got kind of erased from the book in editing, that I was probably the nidus for, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, I lived in Syracuse for a little while, so I kind of used some of that area and region, especially because I had the novel set in the early mid '90s. Syracuse is kind of a nice town for me, because it's kind of a little bit of a city, but as soon as you drive like 10, 15 miles out of the city, you can hit a bunch of farmland. And so I
Mm.
like the idea of Ethan, especially, and his family kind of being isolated, if you will, because the less information you have, the less influence by others you have, the more the influence by potentially your parents. Um, so I would say there's those things, but apart from that, uh, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't looked at my left and right side, but I'm not a chimera. Although I will tell you, the first literary class I was part of, or literary group I was part of during COVID, we did like an online Zoom thing, and one of the women that was there, her son was a chimera, and it freaked her out.
Wow.
So
Wow.
they exist. Some
Yeah.
She used to make fun of him because she said that she always said that his left side ate his right, or that he ate his baby sister or something.
Oh,
Um, but
yeah. What
yeah,
is that makes me think, like, what is is there a stigma around being a chimera, or having DNA in that way?
I don't think there's much of a stigma. I think it's just when you're a kid, if you, especially if you have two different colored eyes, it's
Hmm.
amazing how those subtle differences will make somebody who is not very nice exercise and you know use that difference to just bully and try to destroy the outsider. And so I think there's that type of stigma. I don't think there's much of a stigma beyond that, because apart from the subtleties of the eyes and maybe the hair and some, maybe perhaps even some of the red marks, you wouldn't really know otherwise until you actually sat and looked really, really closely at somebody.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. That I'm curious. I want to go back to the story, the book, and give me, I guess, your ideal reader for the book. Who picks this book up, falls in love with it, and continues to champion you and your authorship.
I think it's anybody over the age of like 15. I think it can, 13, 14, 15. I think it can appeal to a lot of, adolescent, young adult readers trying to figure out where they are in their life, how they take information, and how their parents and their environment influence them. And I think it also can probably appeal to, older adults, book club fiction, because to me, it's kind of an interesting story looking at how a young kid is working through his problems as far as trying to figure out what which parent he's more like, which parent he's not as quite as like, because obviously any adult was at one point an adolescent, and they worked mostly through those same issues and had probably some of those similar thoughts as well. So I think
Hmm.
it's really anybody over the age of, probably 13, 14, 15. There are some, I tried to keep it not graphic, but there are some situations in there I wouldn't really want to have a less than a 12-year-old reading the book, and
Okay.
for the most part. But beyond that, I think it would probably appeal to anybody else.
Yeah. Do you think the book inspires people to take a professional or academic journey as you did? Does it create that interest in the science of it all?
I mean, it's hard for me to say how somebody else is going to react. I would say no, but that doesn't mean that somebody else wouldn't. I tried to keep most of the science out of it. I
Okay.
mean, there's a little bit of science. There's a little bit of, you know, science and scientists that kind of go in and help the story, the science aspect of the story along. But I tried to keep it more of a literary work than a scientific work, because for the most part, if you're writing a book that's very science heavy, then kind of closes out the number and the percentage of readers that could be interested in it.
I hear that. Yeah, for sure. I'm back in school now. I'm getting my second master's degree, so
Good
I'm
for you.
following suit. I'm following suit, Michael.
What are
And
you studying?
I'm studying a master's of applied positive psychology,
Okay.
and it is phenomenal. But it's the first time that I've had to read scholarly articles on a regular basis,
Okay.
and it that itself is a skill to be able to do it and do it efficiently and effectively, to pull out the right amount of information, because especially if you're building papers or theses, like you have to read a lot, and if you're going through every line, every word, trying to dissect it all, it's going to be very difficult. And so uh that's why I was so curious about, shifting, because those are two different types of reading. One, you read for pleasure. Some people may read the scientific articles for pleasure, but I feel like, the novels are for pleasure, and it's just a different setup, different form of reading. So
Well,
I'm
they're lies. I mean, that's the great part about fiction, is
mm,
the whole thing
mm,
is a lie.
Yeah.
Every- all the academic stuff you're reading is actually true. It's fact. They're
Yeah.
facts. The
Yes.
beauty about fiction is that you're going to tell somebody a story. You're like, hey, by the way, I mean, your memoir would fall under nonfiction, so that wouldn't work. But for fiction, it's like, hey, I'm going to tell you this lie, and I'm going to try to entertain you for the next 10 hours.
Hmm.
Versus academic work is, well, this is a true fact. It's like reading the paper.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Oh man. When I first saw the title of the book, the first thing that came to mind for me was the movie Split, where the main character has, dissociative identity disorder and has a bunch of different personalities. I think like 25 different personalities or something like that. One personality is an old woman, another is a little boy. You got, teenage girl. One has diabetes, the rest don't. And it's very interesting. I highly recommend the movie to people who are interested in psychology and people. But I'm curious, do chimera patients, do they have that difference in personality if their left side has DNA from one side and then their right side has a different type of DNA?
No, so the chimera is more of physical differences that exist. So the person should have their own personality as long as they don't have any psychological uh, disorder, if you will. They're not like a two face where, for example, there might be an evil and a on one side and a good physical side on the other, and then they have a split personality between those two physical traits. For the most part, these are just physical differences in their DNA, and their personality is formed essentially mostly by the experiences that they have in their life. And so there's no real difference between the left and the right side as far as a personality goes.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about the process of writing because I think you mentioned at one point in one of our previous discussions about wanting to think about a different title for the book because of the movie and things like that. Uh, I'm curious what the writing process was like for you because so many people ask me, and I'm sure are asking you about publishing and writing books and what that process looks like. Can you walk us through that? What the team looked like, what the steps of the process were for you? Because I feel like they're different for every author, and I'm always curious into learning what that process looks like.
You mean as far as like from first draft to the book goes?
Yeah, if idea to you got some
Sure.
words on paper, and then where you went from there.
So I like to have a rough outline before I start typing. I kind of don't have the overall maybe chapter to chapter outline, but I know that this is where the character is going to start and this is where they're going to end and this is going to be the high point arc in between, and maybe a couple other points in between the high point and the beginning and the end. And then I just start to write. And honestly, to me, it's just you just have to write. Just
Mhm.
put words down on paper and force yourself to write
Did you have a
1,500, 2,000
schedule?
words a day. Um, Ann Patchett, like she's a
Mhm.
phenomenal author. She just says you have to sit and write, and I wholeheartedly believe that. Just if you're going to sit in front of your computer, just write, sit down and type. I don't know what to write, even if you don't have
Mhm.
any idea what to write, but you have to physically write. And then
Yes.
you get a whole bunch of stuff on paper, and then you go back and look, and you're like, you know what? Half of that is probably not any good, but at least you have half of it that is. And then from there, you can kind of maybe get 75% of it that's good. And then you get down to maybe, 85%, and then you're 95, and then 100. And then to me, once you've got as a writer something that's good, then you have to send it to a bunch of other people who
Mhm.
don't have any bias, because as a writer there's just so much bias. There are so many theories that we all have that like, oh, this is the best part of the text right here, and then somebody else reads it and like, yeah, but it doesn't really fit, so it
Yeah.
just has to go. And then as a writer you have to just, all right, well, kill off your friendly passages and move on. And for me, I went and looked for a bunch of agents, and I got a couple of requests and couple, some interest here and there, but after a while, I needed something to physically have, and I found a couple of different publishers that were interested, and I also ultimately settled with Kohler Publishing, and they've been very good to me. They we have kind of a bit of a hybrid model. So I provided some money up front. But they gave me a hardcover book, which is, kind of something that's fun, especially for an author. There's not a whole lot of hardcover books that are an option out there. And then the other nice thing about this publisher, at least, is that they, if you sell 1,500 books as a hybrid author, then you have the opportunity to get a traditional deal on your next novel. So I think there's I don't want to say repeat business that they can set up, if you will. So I've been very happy with them and very excited along the process. So
Yeah,
that
I
would be, I
love
guess,
that.
the story.
I
The
love
story
that.
of the story.
When you talked about finding an agent, did you write a
Oh yeah,
query letter?
query
How
letter
many
and send them all out.
how
And
many? Because I'm curious about the rejections or the sense of rejection there.
I don't mind rejection. I got rejected probably about 100 times. I think I got 2 or 3 requests. And
Mhm.
that's kind of, I think, about standard for somebody looking for an agent. And I think, I spent a lot of time trying to find the right agents that I thought would be most interested or most new. And I mean, honestly, I feel bad for a lot of them. They get so many emails now. I mean, it's just people talk about 200 to 300 a day. I mean, to me, there's almost no way as a new author to actually hit that golden nail on the head unless you can actually write like Faulkner,
Right.
or you're lucky. And there are a lot of people that are really, really much more talented than I am, and there are a lot of people that find that lucky agent that they fall in love with, that the agent loves the author and the story that they're trying to write, and they have a happy ending. But
Mhm.
I don't mind getting rejected. It's more that the fact that this I didn't feel like I could actually move on in my writing career without having something physically present. To me, it meant that the project was actually never done. It's
Yeah.
like an academic, you know, journal article that you write that gets rejected, and then you just decide to shelf it for the next, I don't know, however many years. It actually
Mhm.
doesn't. There's no fruition to it. So to me, that was why I went the hybrid route, and it's worked out, I think, fairly well.
Yeah. I want to highlight something for the aspiring authors, the current authors. Michael just said there were over 100 rejections and a couple, maybe 2% of letters that were accepted, and he went a different route. He did different things. So if you are sensing rejection, if you are going through and you have dreams of becoming this published author and it's not going your way right now, keep going, because you will one day have that physical book that you can send out to your readers. Michael, I'm curious what the role of vulnerability, and however you want to view that word, what the role of vulnerability was in the creation of your book and the journey of your life and your own story. What role has vulnerability played?
I mean, so I think there's some authors, and it's probably, yeah. I'm going to step back for just 1 second, especially if you're writing like a memoir. I'm not. I'm using you as my example. Sorry, but if you're writing a memoir, or especially nonfiction, to me that makes the author very vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
They may be more apt to, when they receive criticism, they may take that more to heart. My story is a lie. It's a lie. So if you don't like the lie, it's at the end of the day, it's still a lie. And I'm sorry you don't like the lie. And I would have liked you to enjoy it. I'm not going to argue about that. But at the end of the day, it's a lie. And so if you didn't enjoy it, I'm sorry. And I hope maybe you'll think about reading something else that I wrote in the future. I mean, if not, that's fine too. But if you don't like it, and you want to, write all sorts of nasty things about me or anybody else on any website or Amazon page, have at it. Go to town. But it's this isn't my life. This is a lie. So to me, I'm actually not that vulnerable in this situation. If this was my
Mm,
life story and somebody wanted to write a statement that, my life was worthless and not, pointless, and it wasn't well written, that I probably would take more to heart. I'd also think that
mm,
that person was a jerk, and you probably still have to move on your way. But whatever. But as an author of a lie, I don't actually think I'm vulnerable at all.
yeah. Well, I will say there are parts of what you've shared with me today that I see as a level of vulnerability. I think it's a spectrum. It's a really wide thing. And to open up and talk about the creation process. I'm the point of vulnerability muscle is to redefine vulnerability as a strength, to connect, to heal, to grow, and to be vulnerable is to be open about our process, open about our motivations, open about the bad things, but also open about the good things. And you have so much to celebrate, and I love that because it allows us to celebrate you in your journey from, your academic journey, your journey from becoming a scientific writer to a novelist. And I cannot wait to see more of what you create. You're a very creative person, and I think creativity takes vulnerability. You write you do music, from music to sports to just time with family. There's so much beauty in your story, and I'm so grateful that you shared that with us today.
No, thank you for
Um,
having me. You're very kind.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Before we close out, I have a segment that is a fill in the blank, and so you let me know the first thing to come to mind, or long sentence, big paragraph, one word, whatever it is.
Okay.
In the line, in theme with vulnerability muscle. Vulnerability makes me feel blank.
Accessible.
Yeah, oh, first, and I love it. Damn, that's good. My biggest strength is blank.
My family.
If I could tell my younger self one thing, it would be Michael blank.
Uh, Go to the SU championship Final Four basketball game in New Orleans. I don't have many regrets, but I
Yes.
had the opportunity to get tickets to that game when the SU made it to the Final Four, and I didn't have any wife and I didn't have any kids. I'm like, yeah, nah, I really don't want to. And I was living in Syracuse at the time, and I followed the team for the previous couple of years. And I'm like, there was a part of me like I should go. I'm like, yeah, nah, I don't want to waste the money.
Mm,
I should have gone.
that's great. Like, honestly, go do that. Whatever that is for you, whatever that game is for you, go do that. When I'm exploring nature versus nurture, I try to remember that blank.
Everybody's different.
hmm Mm. And then a story or book or person that has deeply influenced me is blank.
Story or book that has deeply influenced me. I really liked Toni Morrison when I was a kid. I mean, I thought her writing was just succinct and spot on, and has so many different layers to it. Uh,
Mm.
so I would say
Yeah.
Toni Morrison. I
Oh,
mean, if you
that's
want me to
great.
give, I mean, Beloved is to me her crowning
Yes.
achievement, but
Yes. Yes. Oh, so good. I got goosebumps because yes, that'll change your life right there. Michael, this has been so fun. I've enjoyed learning more about you, learning more about your story, and just the work that you've done to help people. You've helped people your entire life, it sounds like, and I think that is a testament to your character, your purpose in life, and now you're helping people through your writing. From a novelist standpoint, Split. It is a book that is a must read, and I hope that many people go out, pick it up, learn about chimera. Because again, you had to tell me what that word sounded like because it doesn't look like it sounds. And but yeah, there's so much interesting things in this book about nature, about nurture, how our biology shapes us, how our environments shape us. And I'm really excited about this book. Are there any final words, final messages that you want to leave listeners before we close out here?
I just want to thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me and allow me to talk with you and talk about this project. You're an upstanding human being, and I've enjoyed the past couple of minutes that we've had together. So that's been awesome.
Likewise. 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 Well, how can people reach you? How can they find the book? How can they connect? All those things.
Yeah, so Michael Swartz Writes is my website, and the book Split is on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or Books a Million or all the places that you want to go get a book. And you can order it from the stores. I don't know that it's all in every store, but it's in some of them. So that's where you can get it.
Yes,
I hope you
yes,
do.
yes. And I'll put that in the show notes. But Michael, this has been fantastic. One thing that I'm gonna take away from this is that everybody's different. Everybody's biology is different. Everybody's story is different. Their environments that shape them are different. And I really want to challenge people to embrace those differences, to celebrate those differences and uphold the differences in the brightest light, because that's what make us unique. That's what makes our world a better place. And I appreciate you for writing this book and highlighting a population that I did not know about prior to this, and giving some insight there. So with everything that you could be doing, all the places you could be, I appreciate you being here with me, embracing vulnerability.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you for joining us in another episode of Vulnerability Muscle. If you've enjoyed these conversations around vulnerability, please consider leaving a review. Your feedback not only motivates us to continue to do the work that we do, but it allows other people to witness the power of vulnerability. Share your thoughts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And don't forget to spread the word. You can follow us at Vulnerability Muscle on Instagram and me personally at Reggie D Ford across all platforms. Visit vulnerabilitymuscle.com for additional resources and support. And remember, embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. It is the source of your greatest strength. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but most workouts are. So keep flexing that vulnerability muscle.